Can we talk for a minute about our Integrating Heart and Mind workshop?
Absolutely. I'm excited. It's coming up in the fall of 2024.
I'm so excited. We changed the format to make it more accessible to people with like work schedules and personal schedules. And so this time we're going to do it 3 hours on a Friday afternoon or evening, depending on where you're at, and 5 hours on Saturday for 2 different weeks in September.
Yeah, it's so great. Like if you're finding yourself stuck in like sticky bad patterns or having communication issues or something like that, or if you want to just like get closer and trust yourself or your partner more, this is the workshop for you.
Yeah, and individuals are welcome, couples are welcome. If you're interested in really thinking through how to serve yourself well inside of your relationships, then we've built a workshop that will support you in finding the ways that are just right for you.
To sign up, head over to our website at whydoesmypartner.com/events.
We hope you'll join us. Welcome to the Why Doesn't My Partner podcast. I'm Jules.
I'm Vicky.
And I'm Rebecca. We're your hosts. We're also couples therapists and messy humans bumbling through our own relationships every day.
We met through our training and practice of relational life therapy. Between us, we have more than 40 years of experience holding hard relational questions with our clients. We're going to bring those questions here.
And together, we're going to take a stab at answering those questions. This podcast is not a substitute for therapy.
If something you hear in this episode stirs something deep within you about your relationship, reach out to a couples therapist in your area.
We'd also love to hear your questions, so don't forget to go over to whydoesmypartner.com and leave us a question of your own. Here's today's question.
Why does my partner want me to tell her what I talk about in my own therapy?
Because she's nosy. Because she cares.
Oh, because she wants to know that you're growing with her.
Because she's attempting to control you and your therapy.
Yeah, that one.
All of the above. All of the above. No, it could be all of these things. So it could be because, it could be a clue that she actually does not know what's going on inside for you.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's...
And I'm saying she, and I'm recognizing it could be anybody who this one came in from a guy, but it could be anybody who's in any kind of partnership. It could be a clue you're actually not sharing much about your inner world, and your partner wants to know more. That could be part of what's going on.
It could also be, and I'm 100% with that. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And it could also be that your partner might be afraid that they're growing without you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They want to know that you're growing too.
And then rather than doing that in a direct way through direct request or through sharing a vulnerable concern, they're doing it a sneaky way by trying to manage your therapy.
Yeah, not super skilled and superhuman. I just want to really acknowledge the humanity inside of this question on both sides. Like you as someone who's going to therapy have a right to a confidential, safe, private space. And your partner also in their humanity wants to know more about you.
Right.
And your inner
the curiosity
world.
piece.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm hearing. Such a fine line between curiosity and control.
Well, if it's curious,
Can be.
Here, I think here's how you'll know if it's curious. If it's curious, it's like, oh, how was therapy today? And then if you go, oh, it was a big one, I don't know if I want to talk about it. They go, okay. Then that was a curious question. If when you say, I don't want to talk about it, they say, oh, why not? Why not? Can't you just share a little bit of it?
Did you talk about this and this and this? What did you make sure that
know
you brought...
better?
Do you want me to write your therapist a letter to tell them what I think is going on?
Can I call them?
Those would all be management control sort of stuff going on.
Boundary crossings.
Right. But we don't want to get so black and white with it. Like, of course, your partner's interested in what's going on in your therapy. It'd be sort of weird if they weren't. Right. So how do you guys create a space where it's totally fine for you to ask and it's fine for me to say no thanks?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's how you protect your own boundaries, that it's fine for me to say, I don't want to talk about this.
I'm thinking of my own partner and I, and how we're both in therapy, in our own personal therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And we often know when each other's session is, right? And so
Is it because of the way you show back up at the house, or do you have it in your calendars?
it's
They have the calendars, I'm sure.
it's the calendar thing. I literally get invites on my calendar for his sessions, and mine is always at the same time. So like it's known, right? And often we have these moments in the hours after where like we might just meet each other. We're working from home now, right? So we're also having these telehealth sessions. So it's conceivable that we'll cross each other's path very shortly after a session or something. And we might just have a moment like, do you need a hug? Are you okay? Anything you want to mention? Do you want to talk later? And that's kind of it. And sometimes it opens up into, yeah, well, this is what came up, or, and I really want some, this is what would be helpful for me, right? And sometimes it's, I'm fine.
Well, and you both have the space and the safety and the comfort to give both of those answers.
Now.
Oh, good point.
This was this was a space you worked for.
This was an earned space. Yeah. A very earned space. We have been married now for, I don't want to really do the math. I think it's 16 years, right? And this is not a space that we have always inhabited. There was definitely a time where I would have tried to get him into therapy or
Yeah. Tried to get him in, pry it out of him. Because I'm also wondering, and this is back to the controlling piece, Jules, this just crossed my mind, that, and we might have already said this, if I know you're going to therapy and I'm not seeing any changes, what the heck is going on in that room? Again, that's the controlling piece.
And it's like managing what's going on. And
and that's my own boundary, which also I will say, based on my own therapy, I've actually flipped it and gone to him and said, have you noticed any changes in me? And I was not offended when he said no. This was recent. And I told him, I said, I'm actually not surprised, because there are changes that you're not going to notice. I just know that my brain is actually functioning differently, and you're not going to see that. But I was curious if you did see it. So it can go both, but like, it's not, you wouldn't really see it in my interactions, how much growth I'm doing in therapy.
Yeah. I was just noticing, I've been in therapy for years. Sometimes I go on and off, but in general, I go to therapy often. And I'm trying to think if he's ever asked me. I'm trying to think if my husband has ever asked me. I don't think he has. I don't think he's ever asked me what's going on in therapy. I probably have asked him how was therapy, though I don't think either one of us has been particularly pushy about it. But I'm sitting here being really curious about why not, and I think it's because we tend to share.
Yeah, I was just thinking from the bit I know about the two of you, right? From the time that I've known you, which I recognize is not the length of your relationship, but for the amount of the two of you I know, I imagine you to be very like, here's how I'm doing right now. Here's what I need.
Right. Totally. We both would tend to do that. We tend to be pretty overt about it. And if there's something that came up in therapy, whether it had to do with my inner journey or with something between us, either way, I probably am likely to share about it. And if I don't, it's because I forgot, or it wasn't actually that important obsession or something. When he's been in his therapy too, like, not every session, every time. It's not like that. It's not like some regimented thing, but like he shares, oh, this weird thing happened with my therapist. Can I talk to you about it?
Yeah.
Sure. So I think probably one of the things we've done that's created a landscape of a lot of ease around this is we tend to overtly share without even being asked.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And that's
Like
a
it doesn't
big
even
piece of it.
follow like
Yeah.
how was therapy? It could just be like out of nowhere, he just brings it up.
I noticed that James and I are often in a lot of conversation, because we're just like, we do a lot of conversation, especially at night. It's our pillow talk. It's like our unwinding. Our brains are doing this thing, and we have a lot of emotional share. And often something will come up there, and one of us will say something like, "Oh, that might be good to mark for therapy,"
Oh, interesting.
before therapy.
Mhm.
And we don't
Mm.
often follow up with it after, but sometimes it might be, "Yeah, I remember to bring that up,"
Mm-hmm.
but it's not like, it's just like, well, maybe that's something that's too big for me to hold for you, or you want to go a little deeper than I'm capable of taking you.
Right.
So mark that for that. You
Right.
have a space for it.
Mhm.
Right. And if you are being hounded about being in therapy and what's happening and you don't like it, you
Mhm.
could always share that with your partner.
Oh,
And you could
gosh,
do
yeah.
it in our feedback wheel space, right? You could do it in these little 4 steps. So you
Be
could
great
say,
with a conversation.
I've noticed that most Wednesdays you ask me how was therapy, and if I tell you I don't want to talk about it, you ask me several more questions. The story I make up is you're managing my therapy, or that you don't are threatened
Trust.
by it, or trust me, or
Or
something.
whatever the story is, right?
Right,
That's what you're
whatever
saying.
the story is.
That's my story is.
And so when that happens, I feel frustrated and worried. And what I'd really love from you, love, is could you tell me what your hope is when you ask me the questions?
Oh, I love the way you just ended that.
Yeah.
So
What's your
rather than
hope?
telling him what to do, like what I'd love to do is have you stop hounding me. Actually, what if we made this a moment where we could increase our understanding about what the other one was missing and or after?
I'm loving the word hope, like Rebecca just said. I tend to, not necessarily about therapy, but I ask Gabe a lot, and I was going to be sarcastic and say he loves it, but no, I'll be honest, he hates it when he'll be talking to me about something, and I look at him, I'm like, what is your agenda right now? That doesn't go across very well. But I really do. I'm like, I'm just like, what do you?
What's the
I
hope?
think what you mean is, what's your hope?
Yeah. And I
Mhm.
wonder if me saying what's your hope right now might land a little bit better for him, because it feels controlling usually when it comes up. And I'm thinking, because if your goal is such and such, so unhealthy, we could end this right now because that goal isn't going to happen. Like literally, that's a
Right.
real
So
conversation we've had.
really,
I'm like, I need to know
totally.
what you're working towards, because I need to know what response you want me to have, because if I'm not going to give it, we might as well end it. But I could give it to but he's always like, what do you mean? What's my agenda? Sometimes I don't have an agenda. He sounds just like that, by the way.
Mhm. Mhm. Totally. Well, and I'm
But what is
catching
your
too, there's
hope?
like management on both sides, right? So you can tell there's something he wants, but he ain't saying. And then you're going to say, what's my agenda? So that you get to know what he wants so that you can end the conversation or give it like this.
Yes.
Right. So you guys are managing each other a little bit. I love it. Doesn't this happen in everybody all the time?
All the time.
I
All
hope
the
so. It's not just us.
Yeah.
No,
Oh
it's
God,
not
no.
just you.
Oh God, no. So how do we do this different? I think we have overt conversations
Mhm.
about it, and those are always going to feel vulnerable, and so they're always going to feel scary, and they're always going to feel risky.
And
Yeah.
and what's striking me is that, yeah, those overt conversations feel vulnerable. And the whole piece of this conversation, why doesn't my partner tell me about what they're talking about or want to talk? This whole conversation is basically an ask for more vulnerability.
Yes.
Totally.
Totally.
So what if we gave more vulnerability?
Scary.
Unless, of course,
but
your
yes.
partner's feeling threatened by your therapy. And then what they're afraid of then probably is that you're going to outgrow them, not that
Oh,
they're
yeah.
outgrowing you.
Oh.
Oh, yeah.
So it may be like, but it's still a request for vulnerability. It's just a
It is.
request like to manage my vulnerability by not going to therapy and growing without me. I don't know.
Mhm.
Anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So we could always just have the vulnerable conversation.
The vulnerable conversations. Take the risk.
So here's the thought that I'm having. And this falls on this aligns with something that Terry talks about a lot in relational life therapy, that sometimes couples therapy will empower relationships, whereas individual therapy sometimes will empower people out of relationships. And I think that's an important piece of also
I
bringing
do.
into this conversation.
It's like individual empowerment versus relational empowerment.
Mhm.
It's not versus, because I think relational empowerment actually encompasses individual empowerment.
Yes,
It
yes.
just says yes to individual empowerment and yes to relational responsibility and relational health.
Yes.
So,
And we don't
and-
have very many models in our life, in our society. Very many of us haven't grown up with healthy relational models for what does healthy relationality and responsibility look like.
Mhm.
The peer to peer, as almost obvious as that sounds, that when and it was subconscious, but when I realized consciously that I stand equal to my husband, well, to me, my partner, it really had nothing to do with male, female, but that he's not my parent, he's not my anything, he's my peer, it shifted our dynamic. It was clunky when it first happened, when I looked at him not happily, and I was just like, you're not in charge of me. And he looked at me like, I don't even know what you're talking about, because no, I'm not. I mean, this was definitely a power dynamic in my mind that didn't exist in his.
Yeah.
But me realizing it and shifting to I am your equal shifted things for us in a very positive way that he subconsciously had been waiting for.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted it that way, but I didn't even realize that we were in it. So I didn't know how to shift out of it. And that's relationship empowerment that you both are talking about.
And I feel what you're talking about, Vicky, with the individual empowerment, that bringing yourself up into that equal position with him, that is individual empowerment. It is saying I'm worthy of standing up for it. It is saying I'm worthy of having a voice. And it also says you are, and I want to hear you too.
Yes.
And so it's like a both and.
Yes. It's
And
beautiful.
so if your partner's worried that your individual therapy will damage your relationship, or you're afraid that your partner's individual therapy will damage your relationship, or maybe you're both in therapy and you're noticing yourselves growing apart, it may be that some of the messages you're getting are only on one side of the both and, that they're all about the individual empowerment, which is great. But they're not incorporating how to take that strength and bring it with fierce, gentle love to your person and say, you know what? This isn't feeling good. Let's rumble and figure out how to do it different, baby.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. And I think this is the big piece, right? Is being able to just show up relationally and take that stand and say, this isn't feeling good. Here's what I need.
Back to the vulnerability piece.
Now we're back to vulnerability, but we're also back to that individual empowerment, because now I'm sitting here and I'm owning myself and my space, and I'm taking some relational responsibility, and I'm saying, this doesn't, I'm noticing this doesn't feel good. Here's what I need to make this feel better between us.
Which means I also have to be in touch with what I need.
Totally.
So it's both and.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that feels like a really good place to land.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Take care of each other best you can, guys.
Have a good week. We'll see you next week.
That wraps up this week's episode. Join us again next week for another Why Does My Partner?
We hope that you continue to listen wherever you get your audio, and that you'll follow the show.
To go deeper, join us at our boot camp. You'll find the next date at whydoesmypartner.com.
Did you know you could ask us your question?
Your questions are relational gold.
Go to whydoesmypartner.com to either write in or record your question for a future episode.